Okay, let's see if this is working. Cool. And I'll just do the fade. All right, there we go. Just did that crossfade. Good afternoon. Hello, if you're watching the stream. This is Applied Digital Studies, DGST 395, coming to you live from the classroom today. And I've got several people here in person. I wanted to stream today because what I have to talk about is, or what I want you to know after today is a lot of detail about the proposal. And so I wanted to just use the stream to talk through that. I have a slideshow already, and I'm going to get you started on that. And hopefully, if you have any questions, I can answer those questions. I am starting to take roll online and in person. So if you are watching on the stream, if you could just say hi, then I will know that you're watching and mark you as present. Not that I'm penalizing absence, but I do want to keep track of who's been checking in and who hasn't checked in for a while. So if you are watching the stream, if you could say hi, that would be great. So great, I see Emily and Jillian. Cool, and Amber. And let's see. Yeah, and if anyone else joins later, just say hi when you join, if you, I guess. Yeah, there we go. All right, so we got at least 3 people watching. That's not everybody, but that's going to have to be good enough because I need to get started because it took me the whole 50 minutes last time to get through the slideshow. But okay, so as I go through this, if you have questions, please just post them in the chat, or if you have questions in person, just raise your hand, obviously. I don't mind stopping to answer a question to make sure you're getting what I'm explaining so that I can move on with you having that knowledge. Something that I just wanted to, and also if you're in person and you see somebody in the chat like trying to tell me something and I'm not noticing it, then just wave at me and tell me that somebody's trying to talk to me, because I might see it, I might not. I can't see everything at the same time. So I wanted to, this is something I forgot to add to the slideshow, but I just thought of it, so I'll mention it now, which is right now we're talking about this big project, and you really need to have your ideas figured out by Monday. So this proposal is due Wednesday, but you really need to figure out what you're doing as soon as possible. If you're still struggling for that idea, not sure how to think through it, the Digital Knowledge Center has a tutorial that you can schedule for trying, and the purpose is to try to figure out a project like this. So whenever you schedule your appointments with them, if you want to, they call this digital project consulting. And so it's basically a brainstorming session to think through what you might want to do, and then find the right tools for that, and think through kind of what you would need in order to learn those. So, and they actually have they have sort of a script to follow, but it's the same kind of consultation that I could also talk you through, but they're different than me, so they may have other suggestions that I would not have thought of. So if it's something that you think you need, if you need this kind of help, the DKC is available for this kind of thing. Even though it's not a specific technical skill, it's the design part of this, which is kind of the biggest challenge. So they are there to help for that too, if you'd like. Okay, so I will put a link to that in Canvas later because I forgot to mention it earlier. All right. So let's see. I think I'm going to leave those tabs up for now and get into this. Looks like I got a few more viewers online. So if you just join me, if you don't mind saying hi. Oh, hi, I see Megan. Just wanted to make sure I keep track of who's watching and who may not be watching. All right. I also see some people, I'm seeing some people online. Just looking at who's online in the status section there. So that counts too. So I see Phoenix. And Hum, saw you too. Okay, cool. So I'm going to get into it, and hopefully this is helpful. All right, so the first slide here, I don't know if you've edited a slideshow in Google, like Google Slides, but you can add an image, and it lets you search Google for images to add. And this image came up when I searched big project. I don't know why, but it's a kind of camel, apparently. Someone in the last section figured out the species. It's I guess, a fluffy camel. So there it is. I don't know why. But to get into the actual content of the slideshow, the big 3 things that we've already talked about that I've continued to talk about and I will continue today is the problem, the artifact, and the method. And I just have a little bit more advice about this. For the problem or question that you're focusing on in your project, this is usually the starting point, and I recommend starting it this way, but you can do it other ways. This is probably the best entry point. Find a problem you care about or a question you want an answer to. And if it's something that you genuinely want to know or want to do something about, I think everything else comes much more easily because you're motivated by trying to find that answer or trying to solve the problem. So this doesn't have to be a digital thing. That's the kind of thing that I'm interested in. So if you ask for ideas, that's probably what I will think of. But if it's something that is just a real thing in the world that you care about, it can be addressed in a digital way, and that's something that would be fine for this project. So as long as at least one of these big three things here is a digital tool or a digital question or digital digital artifact, then it is digital as far as I'm concerned. So just pay attention and think about what's out there, right? If you look at the sample digital project spreadsheet, which by the way, if you didn't have a chance to do that yet, please do that, because the more that this is filled in, the more ideas are here for people to be inspired by. These are, you can see lots of different kinds of things. So like an oil pipeline contaminating the Missouri River, like that's not a digital problem, it's a real problem. And so someone has made this project in a way that will try to address that, right? Or try to make people aware of the problem, or even to organize some activism around solving the problem. If you're still looking for ideas, look for these either for the actual idea, like maybe this is something that you actually think is an issue you want to work on, or just the kind of thing that is in here might inspire you to think about something that's similar in your life or that you know of, right? Okay, cool. So problems or questions, find something you care about. As far as the artifact, you should think about something that's going to actually address the problem or question, like something that actually makes sense in the context. It's actually going to make the difference that you think needs to be made or answer the question that you think needs to be answered. So this is something that is, there are good choices, there are bad choices, I think. And the project generator is meant to expose that a little bit, because many of these will be very bad suggestions. The topics are good, like all the topics here are valid, but like using Adobe Illustrator to make a video game, I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think online censorship with a video game, I think that could be interesting, but I don't think Adobe Illustrator would be the right tool for that at all. Let's see. Yeah, access to the web, that's interesting. A board game could be a really interesting thing to make that might address that if you design it the right way. Game Studio would be, I don't really know if you could do a board game with Game Studio, but maybe. Let's see. The dark web, like, are you really going to change people's minds about the dark web with a brochure? Like, are you going to walk around with a flyer and convince people that the dark web is a problem? Or, like, I don't know. That doesn't seem very practical to me. So these are ways in which you should do something that makes sense, like something that does seem like a reasonable way to address your question or your problem, right? So, but if you're still stuck for ideas, I think the project generator, like, run this a few times and you might see something flash up that actually makes sense. And, that's up to you to evaluate that. And then ultimately up to you to argue for that, or attempt to convince me of that. All right, so then finally, just make sure you choose a tool or platform that's going to require you to develop a new skill. So I really want to push you to try something that you've never done before. So it might be a platform you've never used, but you've heard about, or something that you've used once or twice, thought it was interesting, you want to learn more about it. I really want you to be pushing yourself, because ultimately, my interest in this project is your learning. Like, I want you to learn something, and the tool or the method that you choose for this project is probably the biggest opportunity to learn something new. Some people even approach the project starting from this point. Like, they've always wanted to try making an RPG game. Here's an excuse to try making an RPG game. Then you just need to figure out what to make one about, if that's what you want to do. But I want you to make. I really want to see you challenge yourself. That this is something that you've not done before. So along with that, I want you to know that the thing that you end up making does not have to be perfect or amazing or the work of an expert. I don't need you to develop expertise in producing this project. But learning something new is important. And sometimes learning something new and making your first ever video game means that the game you make is not amazing. And that's okay. If it exists, that means you've had to learn something. And that's what I'm interested in. Even if it doesn't exist, even if it gets halfway done, like, that's still something. And I want you to recognize that that's valuable as well, even if it doesn't end up doing the thing that you wanted it to. Okay, so the proposal. This is, again, I just was doing Google image search, and this one of Waluigi proposing to Guy Fieri came up. I don't know why. But the proposal itself is a long document that you're going to be creating describing this project. The idea for the proposal, the structure for it, comes from grant proposals. So I've been on a review board for different federal grants, like the National Endowment for the Humanities. And so people that want money from the government, they have to write a really long explanation of why they think they need this money. So that it includes a description of the project, but an argument for the project, saying this is something that needs to exist, and we are the people that are the right people to make this thing exist. And here's how we're going to spend the money. And so it's a very careful documentation of all that. So the proposal that you're going to be creating has a similar structure. I don't have any money to give you, so you're not asking for money, but thinking through it at that level of detail can be really helpful. One of the learning goals for this class is that you learn how to design and carry out a large-scale project. So this is the design phase. This is what we're working toward right now. And really it is just working through the different parts of the proposal, which is what I'm talking about today. Okay, so as far as structuring it, I do request that it be a pretty formal document, pretty consistent in style. So I'm going to flip over to the assignment description. If you notice, the assignment description includes basically an outline of the proposal, and so I would like for you to use the same outline. You don't have to use Roman numerals unless you really want to. If you do use Roman numerals for your sections, you would probably start numbering them at what I have as number 2 here. You probably wouldn't number your cover page, but notice that by virtue of it having a cover page and table of contents, that should imply to you that this is a multiple page document. So I don't know how many pages, but more than 2. Right, so it's going to, if you fill in all the sections, it's going to end up being that long. Yeah, so be consistent with the headings. Please use headings. Like whatever word processor you're using has that capability. Do you know that shortcut, by the way, like that I just did? If you want to make a Google Doc, instead of going to Google Drive and clicking the plus sign and choosing what kind of thing you want to create and choosing a document, in a web browser, if you just type docs.new, then it just makes a empty Google Doc for you, and then you can start typing. Works for slides. Slides.new just takes you to a blank one. So FYI, little pro tip there. It saves you a few seconds, but like, I think that's great. I do it all the time. Okay, so anyway, oh yeah, I was going to show you in Google Docs. Hopefully you know how word processors work, but as you type, you are normally typing in normal text, but when you want to make a heading, you can click this drop down and you can make it whatever heading level you want. So headings are important, right? So use your headings to organize your document, right? And be consistent. Everything at the same level should be the same kind of heading, like heading 2. Probably heading 2 for these. Okay. You may need tables and figures. If you do, then make sure you label those. So if you have one table, label that table 1. If you have multiple tables, it's table 1, table 2, table 3. Same with images. If you have images, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3. Label those with a caption and be consistent in how those are presented. All right, so yeah, that's the idea. Any questions about the formatting? Okay, then I will move on. Any questions online? Don't see any. Oh, Kinnesi's here. Great. Great. So if you have questions online, make sure you get them in so I can try to cover them on the stream if I can. Oh yeah, if you do have citations, you should be referencing different material at certain points in this. Just for consistency, use MLA style for that. Not that I don't think an MLA is inherently superior. I know it off the top of my head, so that's what I request, just to have it be one thing as opposed to multiple different things. Okay, so the first section of your proposal that you'll be writing, that's really part of your narrative here, is the project narrative. And this is the what of your project. So what are you doing for this project? What will it be? So think of this in terms of the elevator pitch. And that's kind of a cliche, but the idea is that you are, like in my field, the cliche is that you are at a major conference and you find yourself on the elevator with the acquisitions editor of a publisher that you want to work with. you have 30 seconds, you have until the end of the elevator ride to explain your idea. And so you need to make sure that it's concise and clear and specific, and also interest them so that they give you their business card and say, we should talk. That's your goal. So think of it that way. You're writing it in this case for your proposal, but it should be there and it should have all of the important things in your project in this part of the proposal. Sometimes this is called an executive summary, and this is technical writing, so this is not fiction writing. You should not have a surprise ending at the end of your proposal. Everything that's in your proposal should be referenced here. It's a miniature version of the entire proposal. Okay, so it's usually going to be a healthy paragraph, like a chunk of writing, several sentences in a paragraph. Okay, maybe 2. Okay, the next section is built off of it, but it is separate. It should be written separately. This is the why of your project. Why is this something that needs to exist? Why would the world be better if this problem were solved or this project existed to solve it? Or why do we need to have this question answered? Whatever the right verb is for your project. Why does this? Yeah, just why? Why? Why is this here? Sorry, yeah, just thought of something random. Anyway, this makes sense though. I mean, this part's pretty intuitive, I think. Just like, why is this here? And again, a healthy paragraph, right? So if it's a problem that you're solving, make sure you explain why this is really a problem. That might be important. Okay, the next section is personnel. So who are you? This is where you have a couple of things you need to tell me in this proposal. As the creator of this project, as the one doing this, you've told me what you're doing, you've told me why it's important. Now you need to tell me why you are the person that needs to do this. And this could take a couple of different forms. It could be that this is a problem that has really affected you. It could be something that you think you have a really good idea for. Or it could be something that requires a specific skill set that you've been developing or that you want to develop. But really focus on yourself in the personnel section. And or you can also articulate why this needs to be a group project. So I've said this a couple times, this is really meant to be an individual project. But if you do want to work with people, this is where you make the case that this can only exist if I have Wayne doing the video editing, because I know he can do that and I need him on my team to do this. If he's not there, then this project won't work. So basically you need to persuade me that this is the right way to do that. And in doing that, you'll articulate what role each member plays. And not just if there's a bunch of us, we can do the work better, because that's not really how it usually goes. You need to have specific things that you're adding to your team for each person. So that's the thought process there. Okay, any questions yet? Anything? Okay, good. All right. Now, this is the research part of this proposal. So I would like for you to review some prior work. So figure out what has already been done about your question, about your problem. And you've got lots of examples in the sample digital project spreadsheet you might be doing something similar. Like you might be doing something along the lines of climate change. And you've got several projects here that deal with climate change in some way. So those should be included in your prior work section. But there's probably lots more out there. And I expect you to do that research to find out what's out there. This doesn't have to be exhaustive research, but I want you to be able to acknowledge that, yeah, people have tried this before. At the same time, you should also be making the case that even though these projects already exist, my project is still a good idea. Like you want to be able to say, like, they've already done this, but I can add more to it, or I can do it better, or maybe it's something that exists at other universities, but we don't have it at UMW, so it's important to add it here. Whatever you need to do to make the case, because each part of this proposal should be persuasive, and that's how this part is attempting to be persuasive. It's saying, they've done this, but I'm going to add this, right? And you want to be as specific as possible. If it's online, you should link to it. You should have citations for each of these. Again, this is the MLA style citations. And yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. All right. Okay, audience. This is something you should also be thinking about. Section 6, who is the audience for this? If it's a problem that needs to be solved, who needs to know about this problem? If the solution is telling people, who needs to be told? Many projects, I've been looking at this class over the years, many people do projects that have the local UMW community as an audience. So that's great. But how do you reach the UMW community? Like, what are the ways that you would do that? So would it make sense to put flyers on Campus Walk, or like paint the rock or post something on the memes page? Like what are the things that you think will get the audience to your content if that's your goal? If it's beyond the UMW, how do you get people to your project? Like putting something on YouTube is great, but just putting it on YouTube doesn't work. Like that, no one might ever see that if it's just on YouTube. So how do you get people to your YouTube video? You share it on Facebook, maybe hand out a flyer, I don't know, whatever you want to do. But think about this in as specific a way as you can to make it clear that you want this audience, right? This will depend on the format, depend on the goals, obviously, but it's something that you should be thinking about concretely as part of the proposal. Right. All right, so along those lines, and in terms of getting people to your content, I want you to think about accessibility. So this is an extension of the audience idea, but I want you to think about specific considerations for different kinds of users or different users with disabilities that might be specific to your artifact. So as an example, video, if you're producing video, you really have to have a complete and accurate transcript of it to publish alongside it or as captions within it. I just realized all your screens are off, so I'm going to turn this back on. Maybe? Hold on a second. I'm going to switch something here so you can all see my screen too. Just need to do a couple of things in the classroom thing. There you go. So now you can look at it there if you need to. I mean, the text is pretty big. Hopefully you can see that. But that's the kind of thing, actually, in terms of accessibility, like you want to make sure that your text is legible to people. And if they're far away from it, they're going to have a hard time seeing it. Or if they're nearsighted, they would have a hard time seeing it, right? In terms of that, there is something I wanted to show you. So this is a textbook. It's accessforall.pressbooks.com. It was prepared by our Office of Disability Resources last year. And the idea is it's more of a workbook. Like it's more like, how do I do this particular thing? It's not something you would read from beginning to end. But if you are creating any kind of digital project, you are actually legally required to make sure that it's digital, that it is accessible. And so that means, like I said, with video, you need to have captions. If you upload something to YouTube, YouTube will generate captions automatically, and they're okay. They're not great, though. And so what I would expect for you to do is edit them and clean them up to make sure that they're accurate. If you are doing any kind of web stuff, there are specific considerations for making web pages. So just a couple examples here. Yeah, so making your videos accessible. There are several different ways you can do that, and this has links to those and tutorials for how to do them. I find, just practically speaking, YouTube's editor is pretty good. So if you upload something to YouTube, you can edit the transcripts pretty easily in YouTube, and that's what I do. So I will probably steer you to that. But if you want to have high quality transcriptions, I think actually PowerPoint has a transcriber built into it now. I haven't used it, but I think that exists. But there's also, like, you can pay people to do it too. Like in actual, like, professional captioning can be kind of expensive, but it's reliable. Like it's good. You get what you pay for. So that's something I definitely would expect. If you're doing anything on the web, like if you're making a web page or you just have a web page for your project, it needs to be compliant. It needs to be accessible. And actually, the Section 508 of the Americans with Disability Act says that any website legally has to be compliant. It is something that is occasionally litigated. So there was a pretty high-profile case where Target.com was not following 508 standards, and they got sued for that, and they had to pay a lot of money because of that. So a user basically said, I am not able to use your service that you are legally required to provide to me, and he was right. So their site is accessible now. And this comes down to pretty common sense things, honestly. Like, it's not something that's super hard. You just kind of need to think about it, right? So things like color schemes is one simple thing that anyone can do when they're creating a web page. Make sure it's accessible. And if you look at how the links are working on this page, like, these are links, and you can tell they are because they're underlined and they're a different color. But what if someone's colorblind? They wouldn't be able to see the color, but they can see the underline. So my rule of thumb is to have at least 2 differences for anything that's different. Like for something to be, for a link, for example, it should be set off by being underlined or having some other difference, like italics maybe, and also a different color as well. So that's something to do that. But you see a lot of websites, and I've seen them where like the text is black and then all the links are dark green, and like that's it. There's no underlining, and it's very difficult for. I don't have a color blindness disability, but I have a hard time seeing links sometimes on web pages just because the design is bad. So think about that. And just because even if you're using something like WordPress, a WordPress theme will have done all that for you probably. It probably has a style sheet, but that doesn't mean it's a good one. Like you need to make sure to check for those things as you evaluate them. Anyway, other things that are a little bit less obvious are things like alt tags on images, and you've got specific advice here for working with WordPress to make sure it's accessible. So just a thought, right? So that's what I mean by accessibility. So you should think ahead to what are the things that are going to come up for your project that you need to make sure are accessible. And some of them are, it could be the case that you just simply, there isn't a way to make it accessible. And that might be something you have to explain as well. But I want to see your best effort here in terms of that. Okay, similar to accessibility, I would like for you to kind of think ahead in terms of sustainability. So what happens to your project after this class is over? So think ahead next year, 2 years, 10 years from now. Does your project still exist? Should it still exist? If it does, if it should still exist, and if it does it make sense? If someone found it 10 years from now, would they be able to understand what it is? And thinking ahead to that right now can be really helpful. Let me show you an example. So I have started doing kind of an informal archive of applied digital studies projects, and this is work in progress. This is very rough right now, and this is not curated or organized at all right now. So this is just every project that I have in this particular iteration of this. I have a whole other site that is kind of like this too, but with a different set of projects. And so this is like my kind of back burner project, is to organize this and make it accessible for you all just to look at it. But even just skimming through this might be interesting and helpful to see for you to see different projects that people have done. But some of these projects are actually just hosted here. Some of these are linked out somewhere else. So yeah, this is the one I had up here. But so this is a kind of archival presentation of this project that Kindle did. And it's over here. I have it open in this tab. This is a website. Nope, that's Bianca's. This is Kindle's. And it's a website, but it's also like, I think an excellent project. So it's a website, but it's also lots and lots of images and GIFs. It's all about book repair. And in her proposal, as I recall, she talked about in the prior art, or the prior part of it, the research, she pointed out that, yeah, you can look at this on YouTube, on WikiHow. There's Instructables, but she kind of went through and explained all of the limitations of those different formats. Like, for example, on Instructables and WikiHow, you get these like really crappy clip art illustrations of different tools and how to use them. So she was like, I could just take pictures of them and like record a video of myself using it and put that in this website, and then it's here. So this is actually like when I believe the library uses her website still to train new students who are working on the book repair stuff. So like it's pictures of these tools. Even though it seems like a bone tool, that's not something I would have, right? So it's good to see what that looks like. If I needed to order this, I'd be like, oh, that's what I'm going to get in the mail, is this thing. Yeah, tweezers, glue. And then what's really cool is like she shows how to do different things. So some of these are just images, like here's where you stick this, and here's what you do. And then some of these are GIFs. So if there's a process or like a multi-step kind of thing that you have to do just right, those are GIFs. But I don't know if there are any in this tutorial necessarily. But like, look how detailed this is. Like, this is great. And so this is all hosted on UMW Blogs, which as a platform, we do plan to keep going. And so there's like an archival version of UMW Blogs. So that's her sustainability plan would be like, this is part of UMW Blogs. And that's fine. But if you put it on your own domain, that needs a little bit of a different preparation. So this is Bianca's, and this is on her domain, biancadust.com. She just graduated, but she's decided to keep her domain active. You may not decide to do that. So if you don't plan on keeping your domain active, you should make sure that your project is archived somewhere else if you think it's important to keep your project. All right, so this is her game project. I don't think the game is playable anymore. At least I don't see any links here. But it might be hosted elsewhere. So anyway, does that make sense? Thinking through sustainability? Sound good? Yeah, it's important. So all that said, by the way, preservation you should have a strategy for, but also sunsetting is appropriate as well. Like that would be just deleting it at the end of the semester, or I mean after the grades are in, let's say, but just not having a life at all. I would prefer that being an intentional thing. Like, go ahead and decide now that this is just going to exist for 2 months and then it's going to go away, as opposed to like letting it sort of peter out or like be in this limbo of, well, I kind of like it, but I'm not sure what to do with it. Like, go ahead and decide what you want to do with this, so you can make those steps, make those preparations now. And I can too. All right, so risks. There are 2 kinds of risks that I want you to acknowledge in this section. First of all, obstacles that your project will face. So challenges, things that you know you might have to overcome. So these could be things that are known, like you need to learn how to use Photoshop, or things that you think might become an issue, like you plan on interviewing people, but you can't find anyone to interview, or the people that you want to interview can't, their schedule is they're really busy and they never get back to you. That's the kind of thing that you should think ahead to right now, describe and you're speculating, I guess, but think ahead to some of those problems and explain what you'll do when that happens. Like, if you can't get your ideal person to interview, who's your backup? If you can't get Photoshop to work, is GIMP going to be okay, or is Pixlr okay, or if you can't afford Photoshop, whatever, like what are the potential ways you could mitigate these problems? So that's one kind of risk. The other kind of risk is risks of harm. So is there any potential danger actually involved in your projects? And that might seem surprising, but every section of this proposal is here because there was an instance where I wanted to know something about a project ahead of time. So I'm asking for all this ahead of time now because things have come up. So physical harm, certainly, right? Is there any kind of physical danger? Like, I don't know. That one's usually not as much of an issue, but I could imagine certain things. Like, let's say your plan is to record a video of, like, a first-person video of you exploring the steam tunnels on campus. That's extremely dangerous. Please don't do that. But that's the kind of thing that you would, if you listed that here, I would say don't do that project. But if there's a risk that you think is a mitigatable risk, that's a reasonable risk, then that might be okay. Even something like filming, like on the river, like anything like that could be dangerous, right? So make sure you list that. The other kind of harm that's a little bit harder to predict might be like emotional or psychological harm. We are not doing research on human subjects here, so that's something that if I see a risk in this area, like in your project, this is something that might actually end up being a reason for me to say no to a project or to steer you elsewhere, basically. Things like, let me give you some examples. These are hypothetical. These are not exactly what people have done, but just as an example, like, don't make a project where your goal is to get revenge on a cyberbully, right? Like, if you want to talk about cyberbullying, yes, that's an important topic, but don't do it. Like, don't accidentally do it, or do a project that's going to expose someone or dox someone that you feel needs to be taken down. Please don't do anything like that. Yeah. Even things like, I think one of the projects that I did reject, and I'm trying to remember what the original, how it was phrased, but it had to do with like giving people different content to see what triggered them or see what they responded to negatively. And I thought this is also really risky because, I mean, you could really traumatize somebody in that kind of scenario. So let's not do that and let's find something else. So these are things to think about. And this is one of the important reasons why I'm asking for this proposal, so I can see and help maybe predict some of the things that you might not see about your project if it involves it. Basically, if your project involves other people at all, that's something that we need to make sure is being done safely. And so I will definitely be looking closely at that. Okay, resources. Or do you have any questions about risks? Like, it is kind of a trickier thing to explain. So do you have any questions about what kinds of risks might crop up? Or, I don't know, can you think of any other hypotheticals, like hypothetically bad ideas? Okay. Another one I can think of that I actually saw, this wasn't one of my students, it was a different class, but I thought it was really problematic, it was someone who did like gotcha style interviews like around campus, not our campus, but like run up to people with a microphone and say like mean comments that they had read online to them to see how they reacted. And I would not do that. Like, don't do that, because again, you could really traumatize somebody or just be really, I don't know, that it's just icky. So please don't do that. All right, so let's see, resources. This is where you need to tell me what you need in order to be successful. So this might be things you already have. So if it's Photoshop and you already have Photoshop, great. Or it might be things you need to get. Like if you need a better camera, listed here. And the DKC, the info desk, you can check out better cameras down here. So if that's something you plan on being able to do or need to do for your project, list that here. This might be something where I can point you to a resource if we have it. If we don't have it, I could maybe help you think of an alternative. But think through what is your toolkit for this project. In terms of resources, the most important thing you have is time. So in addition to telling me about equipment or software, I would like for you to tell me about your time and how long you expect this to take. And this should be pretty specific. So you're speculating. This hasn't happened yet, so you're looking ahead. But I want you to create a time budget, like literally a budget of time. This is not a project that has money, so I can't give you money, but you do have time that you can choose to spend in different ways. So this is an example of what a time budget might look like, and this is pretty minimal, but hopefully you can kind of see, like you should be able to plan ahead for. So like, I can tell you actually, so AMPS, that's the Advanced Media Production Studio, the green screen studio, that is not going to be available this semester, so this is hypothetical, but if you were to use that, there's an hour-long training you have to complete before you can use it. So that's part of your time budget, like you need to plan for that hour. Then you need to think about how much time would you reserve to actually do your filming. So you have to kind of plan ahead in that sense. I can just tell you in terms of video stuff, if any of you are thinking about video takes a lot longer than people realize. It takes me at least a lot longer than I thought it would when I do videos for classes. So if I record a video ahead of time and then edit it, it's like 12 hours average. Like that's about what it takes, spread out over a couple of days usually. Between planning it, filming it, and editing it, it's amazing how long it takes. So it could be because I work slowly, or I'm a perfectionist, or I'm just not good at the software. I don't know. But that's what I know about myself, is that it usually takes about twice as long as I think it should. So if you are doing video, I would say go in with that kind of planning. Another way you can plan ahead with this time is, like if there's a particular tool you want to use, maybe there's a series of videos on YouTube that explain how to use that tool. How long are those videos? Like, is it 10-hour-long videos? You should probably plan on 10 hours of viewing those as part of your time planning. That's a pretty long video to watch. I don't watch hour-long videos usually. But that's the kind of thing that you might be able to get specific about. Okay, oh yeah, also, I would like for you to keep a time log as you do start working, and this is an example of a timesheet. And it's pretty simple, I think. You've got date, you've got start and end times, and then just do the math on how long was that. And then at the end, you should be able to add up that column and explain how long you spent on it. So this, time can vary, and different things can take longer than you think or shorter than you think. So it's hard to say this exactly, but looking for around 30 hours as a goal for your time spent on this project. Kind of that's on the low end. I think probably most of them end up being more than 30 hours. But that's something that you will keep track of in the log. Okay, and that doesn't include the proposal, so that's after the proposal, right? So this is still the planning phase. I'm talking about the actual work phase. Okay, so we're almost done. The schedule is where you tell me about your specific goals for the checkpoints, and as you can see in the assignment, there are specific dates that are checkpoints, so November 2nd, 9th, and 16th. So use those certainly, but if you have other checkpoints before that or even after that, you can spell those out as well. Say what you plan to have accomplished by each of those. Include that in your proposal, and that will help you evaluate how you're doing once you get to those checkpoints. Okay, I think this is it. I think this is the last slide, almost last slide. Assessment and evaluation. So your project, the goals for your project are things that you're describing here. Like you are creating this project yourself. I have not created this project, this is your project. So you also get to determine what it means to be successful with this project. And there are two things that you should include in this section. Both an explanation of how you will know if you succeeded. Like, did you solve the problem? Like, did you make people more aware of the problem? Did you get the elevator fixed, or whatever it is that you are trying to get done? Did it actually get done? That's one way to evaluate it, but tell me what that means to you in terms of this project. You can also include a grading rubric if you want to be really specific about this, but I want you to think about success in not just in terms of the project itself, but in terms of what you learn. So if you do choose a grading rubric, make sure it includes that. Like learning Photoshop is a valuable thing. Learning video editing is a valuable thing. Even if your video doesn't turn out that great or even doesn't get completed at all, you spent 30 hours editing it, that's a valuable experience. Like that's learning. And so I want you to be able to describe that in this section as well. Ultimately, if you do propose a grading rubric, and that's optional, some people they really don't like doing that, so I'm not going to require you to, but if you do choose a grading rubric, I will use that to grade your project. That will be a conversation, I should say. Like most of the time, people grade themselves too harshly, so if you give me a grading rubric, I will talk about it with you and kind of make sure that it makes sense, that it's a reasonable grading rubric. All right, so, and again, what I'm really looking for is process and not product. So I would just, the conversation I would have is just making sure that the grading rubric honors process and not product. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, how are we doing? We're at the end. So this is the questions. These are some frequently asked questions, but I will open it up for more. How long should it be? It should be long enough. And so there's no specific page minimum or maximum, but each of those sections has specific things that need to be there. So it needs to be long enough for each of those sections to do those things. Right? So it's usually several pages. When is this due? It's due Wednesday, next Wednesday. And where can you get ideas? The project generator is one option. Just bear in mind, like I said, many of these are not great ideas. These are good topics, obviously, like global warming. That's a thing. The tech addiction, these are things. Yeah, great. But as far as the thing that you're doing to address it, like making a recipe, like an actual menu with whatever that is, like that's not good. Don't do that. You can also make a whole bunch of these at once, I think. Should be able to. Yeah, there you go. A whole bunch of these all at once. Lots of ideas. All right. So I guess we do need to wrap this up pretty soon, but what are your questions? Online or in person? Jessica, do you have any questions?
Just trying to figure out what I want my project to be about.
Okay. Do you know what you want to do, like what tool you want to use or that kind of thing yet?
Not really.
Okay. Well, keep spinning the big idea generator, and maybe something will come up. And once it does, I would love for everybody, basically, really, to share your idea with me, and I would love to give you feedback on it. Yeah. Jamie, do you have any questions? Do you have ideas for your project yet?
I have a couple. I'm just working through. I haven't decided
Okay. What are your couple?
exactly the path or ideas that I want to do yet.
Sure. Yeah, that's where many people are. But what are you considering?
Just a couple. I don't have specific ones. Is what I'm saying. I
Yeah.
have ideas of things I've seen that I want to change, but I haven't come up with an idea to put that in a format where I can
Yeah.
do something to change it.
Yeah, that's the initial challenge. Like the ongoing challenge is actually doing the thing. But I think coming up with the idea first, that's a difficult step. Do you have any ideas about and this is for anybody, do you have any ideas for what kind of thing do you want to create, right? Anybody interested in making games? Because there's lots of different tools I can point you to for making games. Video is also a thing that a lot of people have done. In fact, I can show you on this gallery, wherever it is. One of the things I'm trying to do on this, by the way, when I say it's not done yet, is, I don't think this works, but I think the goal is to make it so you can click on a tag and then you get all of the projects with that tag. So things that are, this is a project about video games. This is not actually a game, so that tag didn't really work in that case. Let's see, or music, so you have multiple, different people did music. And this, by the way, just to kind of illustrate the range of things people have done, Pat made a mixtape, and if you want to check it out, you can hear him rapping about applied digital studies on it. Pretty interesting. So lots of projects have been built around issues on campus. This was one that was focused on kind of environmental issues, but with a Virginia focus. This is a website that Ann and Beth made. Right, so this focusing on the specific issue of plastic bags, right? Deadly Force, let's see. Yeah, so this is one, I think it's think it's updated more than that, but this was just like mapping locations of police-involved shootings around the country. So this was a project where it kind of became really too big in the sense that like the data is kind of messy, and then like getting a number is really tricky. But so Andrew in this case chose to focus on events that he could illustrate in more detail, as opposed to trying to have a all-encompassing list that captured every event. He was trying to focus on events that he could actually explain. It was a pretty good project. Let's see. Yeah, this is a game, I think. Yeah, this is one, as I keep saying, this is work in progress. That was a playable game. This one is too, but you have to have RPG Maker to play it by Kindle. This is the college simulator. So it kind of goes through, it's kind of like a version of our campus, and you play an RPG on campus and go through real life kind of scenarios. And yeah, if you can't manage your schedule, I think you just pass out, because you have to maintain enough, if you don't sleep, basically. Like you can't do everything that you need to do and get enough sleep, and eventually you fail. Like it's one of these games that's got a designed failure built into it. So yeah, lots of different things you can see here. Yeah, so Jessica, any questions? Do you have any ideas? Not yet? Okay. What kind of, any interest in a particular format or a kind of thing you might want to make? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, so the ones on Wednesday, by the way, that's another great source for lots of inspiration. So some of these I think would be very difficult to do. Like the stealing your feelings one, I don't know how that person did that, so I can't even explain it. So it's the one that Amber talked about a little bit, but Noah Levinson, I don't know if it'll work on here. But what it does is it uses your device's camera, and it takes pictures of you as you're watching it, and then it incorporates your face into the video. So it's pretty clever and creepy and funny, but it's also like trying to teach you something about all those things that are actually probably happening, that your phone actually has the capability to do this and track your emotions and then deliver ad content based on what it perceives as your emotions. So, some people are freaked out by the fact that if you, as you click on things or as you scroll past things on Facebook, Facebook measures that and then uses that to determine what kind of ads to give you. But they also have, I don't know if they're using it, but they have a patent for the ability to look at your emotional response to different things by recording your face and then feeding you that content accordingly, which should creep you out. All right, well, we'll wrap it up. I believe the stream is still going. I haven't heard any questions on Discord, but if you're on Discord, are you all okay? Do you have any questions before I wrap it up? I see Waffle King is on there. And by the way, if you came in after I started, I'm trying to record who is on the stream, so if you don't mind saying hi. Although I see Waffle King Jr. I see you there. So. There you are. Just checking you off in Canvas. All right, well, I'm going to wrap up the stream. So thanks for watching if you're out there, and I will see you all on Monday. Actually, before we wrap it up, sorry. What I want to do on Monday is something like the elevator pitch activity, like an actual elevator pitch. I don't know exactly how I'm going to format that yet, but you should have your elevator pitch ready by then. Not necessarily written, but be able to explain your idea in 30 seconds. Like that's what I'm hoping for on Monday. What I usually do in a face-to-face class is I physically set up part of the room like an elevator, and then I stand there, and then students come in and have 30 seconds to explain their idea, and we see how that goes. Then I give them feedback if I have any. I don't know how we're going to simulate that online, but I'll think of something. And it might just be something that you do within your squad on Discord. But have your idea ready and explainable on Monday, if at all possible. Okay, so I'll wrap up the stream. So bye, everyone. Have a good weekend.